Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS core plays for this week's Memorial Tournament. We had ourselves a week last week. If you didn't see on my Twitter or during one of the live streams over the weekend, I had myself in contention in the $5 GPP, and although I came up just short with a second place finish, it never hurts to cash out for 15 racks. So hopefully everyone out there had a decent week too. For our core play specifically, it was a little bit of a rough one with Sanjay and Spieth both missing the cut, but luckily was able to differentiate up top with some of the guys like Scotty, Max Homa that were in that winning lineup, and it led to us having a pretty solid week. So definitely glad to be able to add to the bankroll before a banger week here for the Memorial itself. We've got a elevated field, all of the best players pretty much teeing it up this week, and a golf course where if you liked some of the carnage there on Saturday and Sunday, well, you're in for a little bit of a treat this weekend. It's a difficult track out there at Muirfield Village. I've already broken it down extensively on the golf course side, but what we're going to focus on now is some of, the players that I have an eye on. So my DFS core plays foundational pieces of my player pool this week, and I'll be getting the leverage to in some of those large field tournaments. Maybe instead of a second place finish, we can go out there and perhaps take down first this week, which in that contest would be for 50K. So we've got our eyes on the prize, a lot to talk about here. Let's go ahead and start this video off with a look at some of the key stats that I'm using in my models this week. In terms of my modeling at this track, we're looking for ball striking specialist. And if you saw the breakdown already, that's no surprise. It's all about the approach play, more specifically your long iron play. You throw in some around the green because it's really difficult around here, even for some of the better ball strikers to hit more than 14 greens in any given round. So you're definitely going to have to get up and down to keep yourself in contention. That's in the model. Putting a little bit less important this week than most. Off the tee, I would say also a little bit less important this week than most, though it's gotten a little bit more difficult since the renovation they did a few years ago. It's still not really an off the tee heavy course, and the leaderboard would bear that out. Historically, more so than recently, but still not really one of those like Torrey Pines or Oak Hill kind of tracks. You absolutely have to be a bomber to compete. We're looking at sand save, another version of around the green. Birdie or better is important with any sort of fantasy model that you're running. Of course, when we're over here on Draftkings, it's not just about placement, but also about how many birdies you make, streaks, eagles, so on and so forth. So for any model you're doing, regardless of course, you should be looking at that sort of thing. Par 5 scoring, shots gained at hard tracks. So just trying to get a feel for the guys that are grinders out there. Greens of regulation at firm courses. This track has small, firm greens. So for players that can elevate the ball, apply spin to it more so than others, they tend to have success at those kind of tracks. And in terms of comps, we're looking at PGA National, the championship course. That is the home of the Honda Classic. And a few other Florida-like tracks. You've got TPC Sawgrass for the players, and then this isn't in Florida, but the FedEx St. Jude up there in Memphis, another water-heavy track where it's about long iron play, and then the around the greens difficult. So a lot of parallels there with the long iron play, with how many water balls in play. I think that's something that doesn't get enough talk when it comes to this event, this track, is that there's a ton of water balls that happen. There's a creek that meanders on, let's say, at least half the holes. There's retention ponds in a few holes, and you're going to see a lot of guys that have penalty strokes. So there's a lot of crossover to be had from that perspective. The long irons, and then, like I said, the around the green shots, especially PGA National, TPC Sawgrass, are some of the more difficult that we have all year. Pretty similar to what we're getting this week with this Jack Nicklaus design. So with that being said, we want well-rounded ball strikers that, right, more than anything, are known for that tee to green play, right? The putter's a little bit less important this week. We're looking at the usual kind of scoring stats that we would for fantasy, and it's no surprise that when it comes to our core plays, I'm playing both guys up top. So it's kind of similar to my strategy at the Mexico Open, where of course we hit on the Tony Finau outright. We had Jon Rahm in second place. When I have a golf course that I think fits the top two guys that well, I'm not shy about playing both up top. You're going to hear a lot of people that say about playing Scotty or Jon Rahm. Well, just like you might see that meme over there on Twitter you've seen for a while, why not both, right? Why can't we pick both options up top? So we'll go through them individually, but they're pretty much paired up together. They have very similar rationales. But with Scotty Scheffler, he's simply been the best ball striker for not only the last 3-4 months at this point, but really the last year. He's been the most consistent player in both ball striking categories, whether it's off the tee and on approach, and he's gotten it done with the putter of late. I know it hasn't been beautiful, but still right around a neutral, which for him is enough. He's gaining 2.9 strokes per round over his last 36. You look at the last 12 rounds, well, incredibly, it gets even better, and that's with a negative putter. He's gaining close to stroke and a half per round in both ball striking categories. That's unheard of. He's getting close to a stroke per round around the green. That is also otherworldly compared to some of these other guys up top. Just looks like the guy can't be stopped. And if we're at a track where the putter doesn't really matter, I mean, last week he literally gained 15 strokes tee to green and literally didn't win because he went out there, he lost nearly 5 strokes on the greens. He might be able to win with that side of sort of performance. Now, in this kind of field, a little bit less likely to what we saw last week over there in for that tournament. But with Scottie Scheffler, he's got such a high floor. All he's got to do is go out there, maybe gain a stroke, maybe even just be a neutral putter, and he could be winning this tournament. And you can't say that about most other players out there. So if you're playing in a single entry, I think he brings a lot of safety to the table. Clip that, right? Of course, when he goes out there, misses the cut this weekend at his 97% cut rate. But that's the fact of the matter, right? This guy does not lose strokes tee to green. And at this kind of track, Muirfield Village that really emphasizes that kind of play, makes him an excellent GPP option. Alongside him, we've got Jon Rahm, and we could copy and paste that argument and pretty much just apply it to Jon Rahm there, but he's been incredible on his own. The putter's been a little bit more consistent, still gaining significantly from tee to green. We take a look at the last 12 measured rounds. You can see he's also been pretty much doing the same exact thing, right? Gaining close to 2 strokes per round with the ball striking, gaining with the putter, and a slight negative around the green. While the around the green numbers might be a little bit worrisome, just look at some of his around the green performances at this track. I mean, when he won here, he had an excellent tournament when it came to the around the green. And when he was going to go out there and trounce the field before getting COVID Saturday night, he was also having a relatively good time at it too. So he's seemingly fits this golf course to a T. I'm hoping the ownership stays a little bit lower because of his PGA championship performance, right? It was just a T50 for him out there. I think that people are going to be on Scottie. That's relatively obvious. But with Jon Rahm, we might get slightly lower ownership. Now, he'll be higher owned than a Rory. He'll be lower owned than a Cantlay, which is interesting, right? He's getting squeezed by not only a Cantlay, but also a Scottie Scheffler ahead of him. So hopefully that leads to like 15% ownership, because if so, there'll be no problem getting to both Scottie and Jon Rahm in plenty of my lineups. I'm getting significant to leverage to both players. So I think it's a pretty straightforward reasoning, right? I don't have to convince you to play a Jon Rahm or a Scottie Scheffler, but I'll say the reason why I wanted to feature both of them here in this video is that you don't have to be afraid to play both of them in your player pool, right? Maybe using both of them together in a lineup is going to be a little bit tough in this kind of field, but to feature one or the other in at least a vast majority of your lineups is what I'll be doing this week. Likely just taking one of the two and moving on. I might even have a few lineups where I play them together. Now, investing nearly, 22.5 between two players is definitely quite the investment. It's hard to deal with your last 4 spots, but it's not impossible, especially with how soft the pricing can be for some of these elevated field events. Next up, a little bit more to right field, right? So I don't think you needed reasons to play Rahm or Scottie this week. And Jordan Spieth at $8,900. And he was on this video last week, right? Mentioned it. He missed the cut last week, which was far from ideal, but it's a completely different play this week. Last week, he was chalk. He was at a place where he was pretty much invincible over the years. And now we get ourselves a Jordan Spieth at a sneaky course fit, right? Off of a few missed cuts where he's probably going to be closer to that 10%, maybe even sub 10% ownership range. So no longer is this chalky piece that you've got to take, right? He's now kind of that pivot you can take to get a bunch of leverage to the field. So a lot of that utility is why I'm getting there. But if we look at the last 36 measured rounds, right, just take a step back, kind of just evaluate Jordan from a, more of a top level view over the last few months, you'll see that he's one of the best players in this field. He's gaining over a stroke per round, gaining across all 4 stat categories. And what I've really been impressed with recently is first, the resurgence of the putter. You saw that with some of those contention performances, but also the off the tee play consistency. He had a few bad tournaments like 2-3 months ago, which are still included in this last 36 round baseline, but we zoom in a little bit more and you see that Jordan Spieth just gets better and better with the ball striking, right? Gaining close to half a stroke per round over his last 12, gaining over half a stroke per round with the approach play. And though the around the green play has been a little bit of a negative there, that's the one part of his game that we can really count on, right? He is one of the best short game players of all time. There's no debating that. I think anyone that watches golf, that has watched it for the last 4 or 5 years, would have to, concede that to the biggest of Jordan Spieth fans like me. So around the green, if that's what's holding him back, I'm not worried at all about Jordan Spieth. I mean, he missed the cut last week on the number because of going out there and not having the best around the green week. Week before that wasn't all that sharp around the green either, right? Just kind of spun his wheels out there. Really good from tee to green though. If he can go out there, continue to tee to green numbers, and just return to the Jordan Spieth magic, he could win this event because he loves Memorial. He loves this golf course. Take a look at his finishes here: T18, T18, T13, T7, and the further and further back you go, he only has one missed cut and I believe well over 10 starts. So you're talking about a huge made cut percentage, a few top fives mixed into the mix. He likes bent grass. We talked about the stat fit already, the course fit. We're looking at a good play, and I know there's going to be people pissed off about him. I mean, I was pissed at Jordan missing the cut, right? Screwing, I believe it was 42% of my lineups last week, which could have really held us back, right? It could have kept us back from even getting that lineup into second place. Luckily, didn't really affect us that much out there, but this week with a completely lower ownership number at a track that I think fits his game nearly as well as last week, I'll be going to the well. That's for damn sure. In our last pick here, we've got Sahith Theegala. And Theegala, he's had 2 starts here, so he's had a little bit of a sample size, but they've been good starts. T32 and then T5 just last year. So I like the way that's trending, and he's a well-rounded player. From the skill set perspective, he has everything I'm looking for. Gains in pretty much all 4 stat categories. You look at his last 12 measured rounds, you can see he's gaining in pretty much all 4 stat categories. The one part of his game that's a little bit inconsistent, well, can be that off the tee play, right? He's a little bit wild off the tee, but what I've noticed with him over maybe the last 4 or 5 starts is that the off the tee play has gotten a lot more accurate. He started to club down a little bit more off the tee and lead into his strengths, which if he's looking at shots gained, I'm sure he has an analytics guy on his team somewhere that's letting him know that, hey, from fairway in, you're one of the best players in the world. Like, if we get cut off the tee play, you would be winning and winning and winning and winning. Well, he's kind of figuring out a way to manage that, right? Last year, he would have a bunch of missed cuts. He was extremely volatile. Now he's one of the higher made cut percentage players on all of the PGA Tour. In fact, he has one of the higher made cut streaks, or at least did for a certain point out there on the PGA Tour. Let's see. Yeah, I think he's still got it going, at least from what I understand. I don't think he's missed a cut. I don't have his last 10 up here on this spreadsheet, but I know for a while there, especially towards the beginning of the season, he was up there on that list. So you're looking at a guy who's completely transformed his game. He still has that top end upside when he's able to marry all 4 categories together. And at $8,400 at a track that he's done it at before, I'm not sure if he's going to be as chalky as he probably should be. He'll be getting some ownership because people love playing Sahith Theegala. He's such a likable character out there. But you put him around a Ricky Fowler, put him about a Burns. He's been playing pretty decently of late. Corey Connors, who's a DFS fan favorite. Wyndham Clark coming in off a win and a few strong starts. Shane Lowry, even Siwoo Kim, who's played well at this course, who I do like this week. The Lowrys and the Siwoo Kims of the world. I think that Sahith Theegala is not going to eclipse 20%. I think he's probably closer to the 15% number than anything else. And much like a Jon Rahm, that's more than easy enough to get leverage to, right? Put him in 25-30% of your lineups, and you move on from there. So I like Sahith Theegala this week. I like guys like Jordan Spieth. They're more like my second, maybe even my third man into lineups that I'm starting with one of these top 2 options. So in terms of value plays, we're going to have to be relatively aggressive this week to try and get that salary flexibility that we'll need. But much like I alluded to before, we have the soft pricing that we're looking for to accomplish that and to go out there and build these top end heavy lineups. So when we go through our value plays tomorrow, of course, you'll be able to check out some of the guys that I'm mixing in to do so. But also on my Patreon page, you can see my entire player pool, right? It's not just what I'm posting here on YouTube. Everything that's blacked out is posted on my Patreon page. I'll have ownership numbers on there, player poll for the entire slate. So make sure to check that out if you're looking for all the behind the scenes access. And of course, to check out some of the other players that I'll have this week to hopefully take down the GPP. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for this week's core plays. Before you hop on out of here, first off, smash that like button, but also let me know who you've got winning this damn thing. Whether it's one of those chalky guys up top, whether it's more of a guy further down the board, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, but I've got a few thoughts about it. The first outright bet I went with was actually not a core play. It was Victor Hovland, and I got him at 28-1, so a lot of value there. We're not going to pick him as our official pick here though. For that, let's go Spieth the Gala. Hasn't won on the tour yet. Feels like it's a good track for him. Feels like he's trending in that direction. He's truly a much better player than last year, and he got himself into the mix more than a handful of times. So I'm thinking that this might be his track. You need a juicy number on him out there too. So we'll go with Spieth the Gala. We'll leave the top two guys to some of you guys out there. So I'll wait to hear from you guys. Would love to hear that down in chat. We'll have the value plays dropping tomorrow, like I mentioned before. Weekly live stream Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure to stop on by with that, with your questions that you've got for me. And we'll get ready to go out there and crush this week. We've got props to worry about. All of that posted on the Patreon page. Just different ways to go out there and print at the Memorial. Looking forward to it. Best of luck with those bets and outrights. And let's get this cash, fellas.